Are you a little overwhelmed, feeling isolated, angry, frustrated, unacknowledged, or fearful? Do you find yourself wanting to retreat from the world? Then it's time to break down the barriers and say yes to yourself. Join me, Christine Clark, on Forging a Life to spark the ignition and put your life into drive. We'll cover how to ignite full circle success on your terms. You can forge through. Every episode, I share a life forging tip to spark your liberated, energized, and profoundly satisfying life. It has never been a question of, do you have what it takes? It is only, are you willing to try? Forging a Life is about you and our world. As each of us forge our unique destiny, we light the way for others, igniting world-healing transformation. Step into the work and make an effort. Trust yourself and the process of becoming. Forging a Life starts now. Worried? Anxious? Stressed? Yes. And you? Isn't this just like the new normal? Do we really have any choice? What is curiosity anyway? What does curious look like? And how can we shift so we're not caught up in this high frequency vibration energy of stress and anxiety? I want you to know I hear you. I see you, and I know what you're going through. I'm your host, Christine Clark, and this is Forging a Life, Igniting Full Circle Success. Today, we're talking about the curiosity cure. And before I get rolling, I want to let you know that you have a centering session available to you to have a conversation, release some of the stress energy, center yourself, and roll forward to your life that you love and enjoy and desire. So make sure you click on that. There's a link in the show notes for you to sign up. Now, in the Forging a Life program, our fourth section is the transformation. And it is about all the ways that we transform ourselves, the process of transforming. And it comes from the thermal cycling process of making a Japanese style sword, the katana. When the sword is almost finished, it gets dipped vertically into what amounts to a miniature volcano. It is a tube of molten salt, and it is repeatedly plunged in, held for a period of time, and then removed. And it goes through this process. And I think right now we're kind of in this salt pot volcano with all the pressures. We're in a place of intense heat, and it is creating dramatic shifts all around us. Now, in the katana, the molecules shift within the blade, within the steel. The molecules shift from face-centered, which is dice, like all the molecules are on the outside, like dots on the outside of a dice cube, to body-centered, which is when all the molecules are in the center. So you think of a square with a light inside, one of those light boxes. And that shift gives that katana its signature strength and resiliency. And I remember when I was out in Seattle with my soon-to-be husband, this was 40 years ago, we were in somebody's workshop, and they were in an industrial area. There was this old building with, 15, 20-foot ceilings and a lot of stone, a lot of beams. And there was a forge in the middle of the place that could be worked from all four sides with a huge hood over it. Over on one side, there was a place where there was a little piece of carpet and a couple of couches were there. It's kind of like a man cave before there was such a thing as a man cave. But the men were all working with the steel, working with knife making. My husband was there. He was kind of the resident visiting guru, and they were asking him all kinds of questions. And the guy says, "Hey, come over here to the forge. What's going on here?" And they had a blade in the coals, and they pulled it out, and it was bright, bright yellow. And as it cooled, of course, it shifts from yellow to orange, and eventually gets down to a red and then a really dull red. And as the blade was cooling, at some point, all of it just suddenly lightened up. It brightened, and it's like the steel took a breath. It just brightened, and then it continued its cooling and light diminishing process. And and then I said, hey, this is you're watching the actual transformation. It's a phenomenon that happens in steel, and it's the actual moment where there's a shift. And as the blade descends through what they call a critical temperature, the molecules shift from face-centered to body-centered in their molecular structure. And that brightening is the energy that's released from the internal matrix. And actually, I said that all in my head and I didn't say it out loud. All the men would have been, oh, the woman knows this, but I didn't. I wasn't had the surety to actually speak up at that point in time. But that's what happens in the shift. There's a brightening and a release of energy as it goes from face to body. And that's what gives the blades their resiliency, their strength. And stress and anxiety are like at epidemic levels right now. And we're in these transforming fires. And it might feel like you're flapping around in the wind. It might feel like you're walking on ice, but we can ground ourselves. We can gain clarity, calm, tap into our power by shifting to our body-centered selves. The face-centered is when we're in the world, when we're in that information overload, when we're just paying too much attention to what other people think, and we're just not connected to ourselves. When we are body-centered, that's when we're focusing on our internal light, when we're working on and listening to our wisdom, our intuition, when we're in flow, when things are working for us, when we are in alignment with our values. That is when you're body-centered. And we shift to body-centered when we get curious, with curiosity. There's so many people have shared with me that the stress they're having, the insecurity that they're having, and many, many people have told me how powerless, like all this stuff is going on and I don't know what to do. And maybe you're feeling that too. These energies are really throwing us off center. Making a difference. What do I do? How do I do it? Really, doing something good for the world begins at home. It begins with you. It begins in our own lives with our own work and our own energies. And getting curious is the key. So instead of like just wigging out and, or just freaking out and living in the anxiety, or just sitting in the mire, like when you're just feel like you're working through peanut butter to get things done, start asking questions. Investigate whatever is present for you. And this is a key piece. Your body cannot hold curiosity and anxiety at the same time. Can't happen. I had a client last week, and we're going to call her Jane. We were just talking about what she wanted to get done. She was going on a huge family vacation in 2 weeks, and I happened to ask just what is the thing that you want to get done in the 2 weeks? What's your priority at work? So she could leave and relax and go on and be on vacation. And she said that she wanted to get one more IT policy created. And I started to just ask questions about this because they were supposed to be like 8 IT policies created. She had gotten 2 of them. She had set herself a false deadline of having them all done by May. Here we are at the end of June when we're having this conversation. And there was a lot of stress and there was a lot of self-judgment. And as she talked, she wasn't getting support from other people within the firm. And I just began to ask questions. And as I asked questions, it came out that these 8 policies that were to be created were something that was brought in from the outside, was an ask from a client. So the people within the firm, this did not come organically from desires for them. They just decided that this client was valuable enough that they should do this thing. None of the partners were engaged or had any buy-in or investment to getting this done. She was tasked with it because she's really smart and really good. She has no IT experience, had no idea what she was doing, and that was stressing her out as well. And then there was this idea that eventually the client was going to come back and check on them. And she was under this pressure of, what happens if I'm not done and this person comes back and wants to see our progress? And just walking through it, and what we figured out was that she already had two done. The client had not returned to check, and it had been 4 months, 5 months since the initial piece had been put in. When I asked her about the goal to get one more done in 2 weeks, I said, "Is that possible?" It was a definitive no. She could not. She had all her normal stuff done to do in between now and leaving for vacation. And we walked through to the point where she was able to just put it down. And so by asking questions, she realized that this wasn't important to the firm. She was making progress, and the deadline she had set herself was false. And let's put it down. And then we talked about just how to start maybe finding little pockets of time to spend on this so that these IT policies could be continually created. But she didn't have to have this hard deadline. And it was through questioning that we got to clarity, that we got to release, that we got for her to just be able to say, I don't really need to be hanging on to this. And we don't know if this person's ever going to come back and ask us about this. I want to get it done so that it's in management mode and I can work on it at my own pace. And everybody around me trusts me, believes in me, and I really am doing a good job. And we got her there just through questioning. So this is what happens. We can live in this situation. We can be all wound up about things and then stressing out, anxiety. But when we start actually pulling it apart, asking questions, what about this? Tell me about that. How did this come about? What's the reality? Are what? And then we find out that we're actually a choice and we can let go, and that relieves the stress. We're going to move to a little bit of a break here. I am Christine Clark. This is Forging a Life. Get answers and insight when you follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram. And remember, you've got your free no obligation centering session available to you. Book that today. Don't wait. Book it today. And stick around because your life forging tip is coming up, and we're going to dive into how to be curious. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Forging a Life, and I am Coach Christine Clark. We're talking about the Curiosity Cure. Remember that I want you to book your free centering session, which is available to you. The booking link is in the show notes. Make sure you take the time to give yourself that gift of releasing some of the stress, gaining some clarity, and opening yourself to your best life. What does curiosity look like? How can I make the shift? How can we make the shift from worry and stress to that body-centered wholeness? First, worry is a feeling. It's an emotion, and we cannot prevent it from surfacing. All emotions are probably the most authentic pieces of us, and when they come up, it's natural, it's normal. So when stress shows up, anxiety shows up, worry shows up, recognize it, that that's an emotion. It's okay. This is normal. This is natural. So the first thing is get rid of this shouldn't be happening. Get rid of I shouldn't feel this way. Release that piece because it does not help, period. It might seem impossible to get over the hurdle, to overcome stress, but really it is very simple. It's just a matter of asking questions, getting curious, Curiosity offers your brain a better option. It gives your brain something else to focus on. And in the process, gives you ahas, gives you new insights, gives you ways to work around things. So anytime that you're challenged and the story in your head is just going out of control and you're stressing out, simply ask, whoa, wait a minute. Why am I doing this? What is this story I'm telling myself? Because when you challenge the story in your head, you're going to gain insight. So start with, what? What am I making this mean? What is the story I'm telling myself? Because we have experiences, we get stimulus, and then we create what we decide it means, whether we brush it off, whether we take it on, whether we, get angry or laugh at it. That's all in our control. So what is the story I'm telling myself and what am I making it mean? And then to just what is true, is this thing that I've decided absolutely 100% true? I.e., are there other possible stories? Like with my client, she had set herself a false deadline of finishing 8 policies by May, which was a huge chunk of extra on the already full plate of work. And is it really true she had to get that done that fast? Is it really true that it was that important? And we discovered that it wasn't actually. And what was another story? Well, that this is something that can be worked on in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to still look good because I'm taking care of the other people in my office, and I don't need to stress out on my performance for them because they weren't buying in, right? All these other stories were there. It's just a matter of uncovering them. So ask what? What am I making this mean? Is this absolutely 100% true? And be honest with yourself, because a lot of the times what we are creating is what we're creating, right? It's not necessarily 100% true. There are other ways to look at things. You can go back to when, if you're finding stress, when did this start and what was happening then? Okay, first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock, you got your cup of coffee, you turn on the news, something on the news says blah 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 blah, and next thing you know, you're wigging out and you're going down this rabbit hole of stress and conjecture and energy drain, and you're zooming into it, and it's like, wait a minute, how did I get here? When did this start? Well, this started at 7 o'clock in the morning when I had my cup of coffee and I turned on the news. What was happening then? Well, I was having coffee and I was turning on the news. What happens if maybe tomorrow you have your cup of coffee, but you don't turn on the news? When did this start? What was going on? And back it up to what could I do different? Instead of having coffee with the news, have coffee with a notepad and just write down some thoughts. Have coffee with great music, get some jive in your morning. Anything to stop the trigger is beautiful. And you can find that when you go back and say, when? When did this start? What was happening then? One of the questions that we ask a lot, and this comes up almost habitually, is we ask why. And I want to warn you to be careful about the why. If you are getting curious and saying, why do I think that this is what it is? Why do I think about that? That kind of leads to exploration. But if you say, why am I stressing out? Why is this happening to me? That why will lead you into all the reasons that you're not showing up well. Your brain can really just say, oh, well, because of this, this, and this, and this, you don't match up, right? You're not living as you should live because you made this mistake and you made that mistake, or it triggers blame. It's because of those people and this thing, which is outside your control. So those whys tend to keep you in the rabbit hole, keep you in the cyclical. But if you can ask with Interesting and relevant questions. Why do I think that this is so important? And why do I believe when that person says this thing? And really explore. That can help. So all these things are just a way of just triggering your brain to get a little curious. And in the moment of curiosity, you automatically lose the anxiety and the stress. One of the easiest things to do that doesn't take anything is just change your vision, change your focus, expand your vision. When we are stressed, when we are anxious, we tend to get really narrowly focused. And it's in our biology, it goes from fight, flight, freeze when we're triggered, like everything just comes in and we lose our peripheral vision. Um, so if you can just simply expand your vision and start looking around the room, just do a holistic scan of the physical space where you're at and really look at the details. That simple process will alleviate stress and anxiety for you. Go back and scan everything you've done and experienced in the day in as much detail as possible. And make special note of everything that you've accomplished, everything that has gone well. I'm having my coffee. I do this every day. It's a habit. And I love coffee. I like having coffee. I love flavored coffee. Smell the caramel, smell the hazelnut. Really get into the detail of what's happening right there. And I guarantee that your stress level will diminish. I want to make sure that we get our life forging tip in for you today because this is one guaranteed takeaway that will carry you forward. And I know you're going to be able to take it, use it, run with it. So, our conversation today is really all about managing anxiety to live freer and more joyfully. So, take this life forging tip to heart. Stress and anxiety cannot coexist with curiosity. They can't, period. When you feel the tension and breathe deep and step back, ask yourself, can I do something about this right now? If the answer is yes, say, what am I willing to do and do that thing? If the answer is no, I cannot address this and do anything about it right now, then put it down. And I mean, take a visual, see that thing in your hands, and say, not now. Drop it to the floor and kick it away. Feel the release. Move on and repeat as necessary. See, good job. You've got this. It is so easy to do. You know, when we are connecting to ourself with an interesting entry of understanding, we can also get curious and alleviate our stress and anxiety. What do you already know about yourself, about the situation? What experiences have you had that have been positive, that have prepared you to deal with what you're dealing with right now? What other resilience and strength have you nurtured because this is not your first time around? Connect yourself with your own understanding. Connect yourself with your own strength and resiliency and your experiences that have prepared you to walk forward and to deal with what is present. That's one of the greatest pieces of curiosity you can, because it's life affirming, it's affirming who you are, and that's exactly what you want to do. And you will break that stress, break that anxiety. Why? Because you're moving from stressing out, waking out, and being in the cycle of, I don't know what to do, to, hey, I know how to handle this. I know how to handle that. I've done this before. Look, and it connects you to your power, which is what you want to do. And this is just one of the best things that you can do. So as you continue, there are all different kinds of ways to get curious and just continue to think about questioning what is. we tend to, because of the information overload, we get overwhelmed and we stop really discerning what it is that's happening and how it's coming into our life. And that's the piece that we need to break. That's the piece that we need to stop and slow down and remove ourselves from, so we become discerning, so we get more clarity and quit just being, under the waterfall all the time. Here's my closing message that I wanted to give you for today. Through curiosity, we shift to body-centered wisdom, allowing us to release, transform, and flourish. Calm, surety, and confidence are yours when you operate with conscious self-compassion in response to fear, stress, or anxiety. As you heal, center, and elevate, you put centered energy into the world. With your cup filled, you can make a difference for others. I'll get you started. Reach out to Coach Christine Clark on LinkedIn and YouTube. Sign up for your free, no obligations centering session and visit forgingalife.com. Until next time, keep forging through. You have been listening to Forging a Life with me, Christine Clark, igniting full circle success. Tune in every second and fourth Tuesday at 9 a.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more life forging tips to spark your liberated, energized, and profoundly satisfying life. As each of us forge our unique destiny, we light the way for others, igniting world healing transformation. It's never been a question of, do you have what it takes? It's only, are you willing to try? Schedule a complimentary personal clarity session. Visit forgingalife.com. That's forgingalife.com.